Ladies and gentlemen, mabibi na mabwana, hamjambo. How are you today? Please, another round of applause, a warm round of applause to the National Cereals and Produce Board. Thank you so much. Asante sana. Thank you so much, and our guests are arriving. And thank you again for making time for us. I'd like to invite the University of Nairobi Choir to come and sing for us just a few songs, and then we can begin our program officially. Karibuni sana mabibi na mabwana. My name is Nimro Tabu, and I'll be telling you a bit more about today's program, but thank you so much for making time to be here with us. And as our guests arrive and settle down, I'd like to invite once again the University of Nairobi Choir to come and entertain us briefly. Thank you. National anthem, and then the East African national anthem, and the integrity anthem.
Basi na tuweze kuomba pamoja. Kwa jina la Baba, Mwana na Roho Mtakatifu. Mwenyezi Mungu, Mungu uishie milele, unayehifadhi mbingu na nchi, uliyetuumba sisi kwa mfano wako, tunanyenyekea mbele zako asubuhi ya leo, tukitambua mamlaka na ukuu wako. Mwenyezi Mungu, tutakurudishia shukrani kwa kujumuisha pamoja asubuhi hii ya leo, tunaposherehekea miaka 20 tangu kama Waafrika tutangaze kwamba tutapinga na kupigana na ufisadi. Mungu wetu, twaomba uwepo wako uwe nasi tunapoanza, nenda pamoja nasi hata tutakapokuwa tunajadiliana mambo tofauti. Mungu, kuwa nasi hata tunapoandaa na kufikiria pamoja jinsi tutakapoendeleza hii vita dhidi ya ufisadi. Mungu wetu, twaomba uwalinde wanao weka maisha yao mbele kupinga na kukataa ufisadi. Twaomba uwalinde kwa uovu wote, twaomba uwape ujasiri. Na sisi wote twakuomba kwamba ukaweze kuzipindua mioyo zetu, zikaweze kukubali kwamba tuweze kuishi katika mazingira ambayo yanafanya ufisadi kuendelea. Tuomba kwako utupe nguvu na ujasiri, kwa sababu kwa katika maandiko yako matakatifu hakuna mahali umetupa nafasi ya kuweza kushiriki katika mambo ya ufisadi. Tuomba kwako ukatupatie kuishi katika tabia jema za kupendeza wewe, na katika maisha yetu tukumbuke kwamba tunalo jukumu baada ya maisha haya hapa ulimwenguni, tutawajibika kwa yote ambayo tumetenda. Kuwa nasi mpaka mwisho. Ubariki nchi yetu, bariki viongozi, bariki institution hii ya masomo. Tukishukuru kwa vile Mungu unazidi kuitumia kuleta maendeleo na maono ya mbele katika nchi yetu hii. Kuwa nasi Mungu Baba, tunanyenyekea kwako na utusamehe katika udhaifu wetu. Na ni kwa Kristo Yesu Mwokozi wetu twaomba, kwa jina la Baba, Mwana na Roho Mtakatifu.
Somebody na mukanga nishiberera, somebody na mukanga nishiberera, mubanani adu akenyaga kwishongo sungu samarinda nishiberera, somebody na mukanga nishiberera, somebody na mukanga nishiberera, mubanani adu akenyaga kwishongo sungu samarinda nishiberera,
which calls for partnership in the fight against corruption. When you look at the Article 11 and 12, talks about involvement of the media, civil society, and indeed all partners in the fight against corruption. And it is on this backdrop that Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum was created by an initiative of EACC. And the objective was to drive a partnership or inclusive approach to the fight against corruption. Of course, on the understanding that corruption has permeated in all sectors, and there's no single sector or institution that can say they are free from it. And therefore, it becomes important for all of us to come together and fight this scourge. When we were planning this event with the University of Nairobi, we were told the capacity of this room is 500. So when I see people overflowing there, I think that we are over 500. Can we appreciate ourselves? This is a demonstration that we are anti-corruption crusaders. Tell your colleague next to you that I am anti-corruption crusader. And this is therefore a big day for all of us. The program before you has lined up very well-researched good speakers who are going just to unpack the issues, to help you dialogue, to help you you know, I have nothing to do, I have no role to play in the fight against corruption. As an individual, remember the biggest role actually lies with you as an individual, because you have a duty to shun corruption, you have a duty to report corruption, you have a duty to ethical life, whether in public or private life, and you actually have a duty to be a role model, even before we go to what institutions can do. So for me, that is very important to reflect as we commemorate this day, what is the role of all of us as individuals? And if we are able to play it effectively, then you realize that a lot of corruption cases that stream to EACC will be actually prevented it before it happens, and as individuals will have taken responsibility. We have exhibitors outside. We have the Office of the Auditor General. We have Kenya Revenue Authority. And we have Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and CLIF together. That is not just a desk with merchandise to distribute. It's a desk that offers guidance on the various services offered by these institutions. And for the young people in the house, there are very good merchandise for you. I know there are notebooks, there are good t-shirts, there are caps, umbrellas, and some pamphlets with a message. I appeal to you to visit those desks. Of course, they are not being given. You will have to answer a question, and this question will be based on your reflection. For example, when is the last time, or what did I do in the last semester, where you are in recess? Did I walk into an examination room with a Kenya? Was I late for class? Did I go clubbing and the following day I was late for a cut? So those are some of the questions that, and they're looking for just an honest answer. EACC officers are not on duty this morning, so no one will arrest you. Say the truth. It is the things we do in our daily life. So I encourage you to visit those desks to actually answer one or two questions. And you know, you never to get one when they need you. So thank you very much. Be welcome and feel comfortable together so that we have this dialogue. Thank you.
Can do better than that. Yeah, one more time for Mrs. Petrolina Chengo, the head of Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum, CLIF Secretariat. I'm happy to announce the presence now of Justice Aaron Ringera, our chief guest today. He's a Justice Emeritus of the East Africa Court of Justice and also Court of Appeal of Kenya. Karibu sana. Thank you so much for making time with us. Makofi kwake. At this juncture, let me now invite the Deputy Vice Chancellor, the University of Nairobi, Professor Julius Ogengo, to come and make his remarks. Remember what we agreed, right? Remember what we agreed, eh? Yeah, let's show the chief guest that we're with this, right? Okay? Professor Julius Ogengo, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, everybody. I acknowledge that chair. Today, I am the acting Vice Chancellor. So I begin by bringing you the very warm regards of Vice Chancellor who traveled. But so then, Justice Aaron Ringera, it's my pleasure to shake your hand, just to greet you. Welcome, Judge Emeritus of the East African Court of Justice and the Court of Appeal of Kenya. Monica Mwiru, the Vice Chairperson of EACC. Of course, my brother, I sat next to you for the CEO EACC, CPA Nancy Gadhungu, I haven't seen, Charity Kagwe Ndungu, the head of Anti-Corruption, Crime Prevention, Criminal Integrity Forum, a delegation from South Africa, including my colleagues in academia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Definitely, it's with great honor and pleasure that I stand here before you during the enjoyment in the fight against corruption in the African continent. This gathering is a reminder of the critical role that higher learning, and especially the University of Nairobi, play in the fight against corruption. Our university has long been committed to promoting integrity, transparency, and accountability in all aspects of our operations. And we take great pride in our contributions to combating corruption in our society, into the anatomy of corruption from the mid-1990s. More recently, Eric Ngumbi's Master of Law thesis entitled The Viability of Lifestyle Audit Corruption Tool in the Public Sector, which was adopted by Parliament in drafting the Lifestyle Audit Bill. I am citing these works to emphasize, asante sana. I'm citing those works to emphasize that the University of Nairobi recognizes the critical role of education and knowledge sharing as a powerful tool in the battle against corruption. Evidence-based research is essential for informing policy decisions and designing effective anti-corruption measures. In addition to education and research, the University of Nairobi has actively engaged in partnerships and collaborations with government agencies, civil society organizations, and international bodies to enhance our collective efforts against corruption. We have participated in anti-corruption campaigns, organized conferences and seminars, and provided training and capacity building programs. Pressure against corruption. Fighting corruption requires collaborative effort. The university has placed strong emphasis on integrating anti-corruption education into our curriculum, ensuring that our students not only acquire academic knowledge, but also develop a strong understanding of the ethical principles that underpin a corruption-free society. We continue to instill leadership and integrity values in our graduates because they are the leaders today and tomorrow. We know that our students, while still here, are often the and voice of good governance and integrity. Unfortunately, when we release them to society, they start acquiring bad culture. That should be a cause of concern to us as citizens of Kenya. It means that something is wrong with our moral and social fabric. But we shall not be discouraged as a university. Fighting corruption is like a marathon race. It is long and one has to be tactful. It is a battle that must be won. All institutions should proactively develop internal systems to slay this dragon. One notable initiative that deserves mention is the establishment of the University of Nairobi Committee on Corruption Risk and Mitigation, which serves as a focal point for promoting integrity and ethics within the university community. It provides a platform for reporting and addressing corruption-related concerns, ensuring that our institution maintains a high standards of transparency and accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, as we commemorate this African Anti-Corruption Day, let us not forget that our fight against corruption extends beyond this day. It requires sustained commitment and collective action from all sectors of society. The University of Nairobi remains steadfast in its dedication to this cause. We will continue to promote integrity, to educate our students, to conduct impactful research, and to collaborate with stakeholders to build a corruption-free Africa. I urge everyone present here today to join hands in this noble endeavor. Let us inspire change. Let us champion integrity. Let us create a society where corruption has no place. Together, we can make a difference. Lastly, I extend my gratitude to EACC, KLIF, UNODC, and all stakeholders, including the media, for supporting this crusade. May this commemoration be a stepping stone towards a corruption-free Africa. Thank you.
Let's do that again for Professor Julius Ogengo, the Deputy Vice Chancellor at the University of Nairobi, also in charge of the academic affairs. Makofi na asante sana, Professor Ogengo. Let me now invite Madam Charity Kagwi Ndungu. She's the head of the Anti-Corruption Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Program at the UNODC Regional Office for Eastern Africa. Makofi kwake as she comes to speak to us. Karibuni sana. And remember again, you're on social media. The hashtag on Twitter is Kenya, hashtag Kenya against corruption, hashtag Africa against corruption. Karibu sana, madam.
Good morning, everybody. Chief Guest Justice Ringera, my good friend, CEO of EACC, Mr. Twalib. May I just adopt the protocols that have been set out by our MC here? And just say that today is, it has memories for me. My very first day in university, I was in this hall. It was completely different, of course, at that time. But I am a graduate of Nairobi University, as I can see several others, including Mr. Twalib here. And I don't know if Justice Ringera remembers me, but he was my teacher. So seeing here today, I look at you, and one of the people, what I have to first acknowledge is all the students that are present here. Can we see the students? Can you stand up, please? Thank you. So when we see you, I hope you see yourselves in us, people like Mr. Twalib and us, who have come through this institution. But the first thing as I address this, I want to say that Kenya and Africa is the youngest population. We have the greatest hope in human capital as well as mineral capital. And we have to free our minds of the shackles that has had us for so long and for centuries, in which we have been victims. And many times we still see ourselves as victims. And when you see corruption thriving in our countries, corruption thrives because we have the scarcity mentality. We feel that unless I grab something, unless I have something, then I do not have a future. But we fail to see who we really are. I think we are the most powerful group of people that there is. And as I speak to the young people here, I want to remind you of the changes that have been made throughout history by people exactly like you, and at great cost, many times. Black Lives Matter was led and has been led by young people. That is one of the most recent ones. Going back, and I see our colleagues from South Africa, the Soweto uprisings, that changed the course of apartheid, led by young people. I wish our young people would see their power and see what they have. Not see themselves as victims, see themselves as leaders. And as I see Mr. Twalib and the rest of the leadership here, I see people who are building institutions, just like we are, building institutions that are like trees that you are going to be able to take a shade on. And you have leaders like Mr. Twalib who are committed to the cause of anti-corruption. But if Africa would rise, and Africa has done so. As I stand here, I stand as the head of anti-corruption and criminal justice program in Eastern Africa. And Kenya was the first to sign the UNCAC, the UNCAC convention. We have always wanted to fight corruption, but every single time there has been corruption fights back, and we all know corruption fights back viciously. But now I want to call upon you guys, young people, to understand the cost that it will have on you and your future generations. I'll say just one small thing for many people. We used to demonstrate on issues, and we would ask people in authority and hold them responsible for what was happening. Dams can be built. And if you could have those conversations, we need to have those conversations led by young people. Because you young people are, I think, the most powerful force that we have in this continent. It has been said that when we have a visionary young people, then the future has hope. Then the country's future is bleak. And I want to put it to you, but by seeing you here, that we do not have a bleak future. We have a strong future. Ladies and gentlemen, a Swahili saying tells us that a fly that does not listen follows the corpse to the grave. Do we want to be that fly? What cost will that be? So here, as I stand, I first want to celebrate the leaders in anti-corruption fight. I know Justice Ringera did put up a good fight, not only from the beginnings of his career, as he worked also with EACC, but the fight has got to continue. And Kenya, as well as the rest of the region, are working extremely hard, and there has been a lot of progress that has been made. But that just simply scratches the surface. So much more has got to be done. And again, just as it was said earlier on, the change has got to start with you, with me, with us in our homes. A saying from Ghana says that the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. Recently, I was at a graduation, and At this graduation, one young man talked about refusing to use the Mwakenya and passing his exams despite not using Mwakenya. And then the others who used Mwakenya passed. But then he told us what happened to those who passed after they used Mwakenya. Several of them who used Mwakenya and became doctors have committed suicide because it was impossible. It was impossible now when it comes to practice. Several of them are alcoholics because they used the shortcut and the shortcut did not serve them. Yet you could have actually done what suits you. If you looked at your own power, you don't have to cheat to become who you have to be. Your gifts, all of us are gifted in a way that we can make use of our combined giftings. I don't have to be, I would have failed medicine, I can tell you for a fact. Glad I didn't use a Mwakenya. But I do make a good lawyer. And I had good teachers. And because I was set, I am in the field that I was supposed to be, I am able to be where I'm able to impact things within this country and within our region. So I put it to you. And I thank you, EACC, for having this meeting here in the bastion of leadership of Kenya. Nearly every key leader in Kenya has come from here. I was speaking to the chancellor, and they said that we have had, how many graduates from this place? Over 200,000. Across the world, the degree from UON is recognized as a powerful degree. I don't know how to speak to you to see and to understand, to remove yourself from that mentality that you are with integrity, ready to stand up for what is right, because you're not going to sell out your birthright for a bowl of soup. Thank you.
One more sharing your kind remarks with us. I think all of you know that in Africa, both Kenya and South Africa have made serious fights against corruption, right? But as Madam Dungu said, corruption does indeed fight back. It's been efforts upon efforts, and we're glad where we are today. I was just looking at the corruption index right now. I don't know, the latest one was done maybe sometime in 2022 or 2021. When you look at the corruption index between Kenya and South Africa, there's about 14 points difference between them. Intentionally, I decided not to say who's ahead, who's below, okay? But let me now invite Professor Firoz Kalkalia, the chairman of the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, South Africa, to just make a few remarks, and then we'll proceed with our program. A round of applause as it comes. Yeah. I wish to also keep on reminding you that we need you to, say a word or two on social media. Yeah, we're still on hashtag Kenya Against Corruption, hashtag Africa Against Corruption, as we commemorate this day, the Africa Anti-Corruption Day 2023. Makofi to Professor Firoz, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. In Swahili, it's jambo, eh? In the Nguni languages in South Africa, it's sanbonani. Sanbonani, yes. Or in the Sesotho languages, dumelan. I don't have a full protocol list, so I'm going to do what we do in South Africa to avoid embarrassment, and to say all protocol observed. On behalf of my delegation, I want to express our profound gratitude for the welcome we've received. We are on a learning journey here in Kenya. Yesterday we met with the Administrative Justice Commission. We had a very instructive meeting, and tomorrow we'll be meeting with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission of Kenya, a meeting that we are looking forward to. We have a serious problem of corruption in South Africa, and it's appropriate that we're here to learn from your experience. The peoples of our continent have struggled long for independence and self-determination. We've had a difficult history of colonialism, which has constrained our development. Through a long struggle, many of our countries achieved independence. But our ability to fulfill our aspirations has been constrained by external factors, but also, and regrettably, by our own limitations, by our internal weaknesses. We have learned that lesson. We are learning that lesson in South Africa, only 30 years after our independence, our liberation. Corruption is what steals our future, what compromises our aspirations, what defeats our struggle for self-determination. So we see a clear connection between the struggle to confirm and realize the aspirations of self-determining communities on our continent and the struggle for corruption, against corruption. I want to say to the young people who are here, I also come from a university, it's up to you to stand up and continue that struggle for your own development, your own freedom. Even if you think, many of you will think that our generation has failed you. Do not, as my colleague has just said, betray your aspirations for a bowl of soup. Thank you once again for inviting us to your beautiful country and for being willing to share your insights and expertise with us. Much appreciation. Thank you very much.
Makofi tena tafadhali, makofi. To Professor Firoz, thank you so much for those kind remarks. And ladies and gentlemen, we're moving quite well in terms of time and in the program. I'd like to tell you now that we're going to have a brief panel discussion here. And I'd like to invite a couple of guests, Bwana CEO, chief guest, mazungumzo kidogo, ili tuweze kuelewana, so that we also get to hear what some of the students have to ask the panelists in terms of fighting corruption and what have you. So I'd like to invite from the professional sector, Dr. Leteng is the chairperson upstairs. If he's here with us, he can be coming to the podium through the back. Professor, Dr. Leteng from the professional sector. The other person I'd like to invite is from the civil society, Mr. Abram Misoi, from Transparency International Kenya. I know I saw him earlier, Tafadhali Karibia. I wish to invite also from the faith sector, His Grace Dr. Bishop John Warari, to be representing the faith sector. Karibu sana to the panel. Let me also invite from the academia, Dr. Gatete, from the University of Nairobi. Karibu sana. This is going to be a very brief Q&A, and I know there are questions that have been prepared by some of the students from the University of Nairobi. Let me also have a youth representative, Melvin Togo. Tafadhali, karibu sana. And as they come in and settle down, I'd like to ask the students who are helping us with the questions today to be ready. I know somebody is going to be taking the microphone round so that we can proceed effectively. Lakini karibuni sana Bwana Misoi, karibuni sana, Your Grace, His Grace Dr. Bishop John Warari, Madame Melvin, who's here with us, karibuni sana. I think we're ready to proceed, and I'll ask from the audience. I know there are questions that you had prepared in advance. This is in academia, the private sector, civil society, the faith sector, basically to understand how these organizations and what they're doing to help in the fight against corruption in this country. Tafadhali, yule wa kwanza ambaye kona kipaza sauti, tuanze moja kwa moja. Unaweza kuelekeza sauti ama swali lako kwa yoyote, tafadhali. Please, when you get the microphone, start with your name. You can stand up and then start with your name, what you do, and then you can shoot your question. Tafadhali. Are we ready with the microphone? Question number 1. I know there are questions. There you go, at the back. Asante.
Hello, everyone.
Please stand up. Thank you.
My name is Faisal Abdi. I'm from Dedan Kimathi University of Technology. I'm also the chairperson of Dedan Kimathi Integrity and Ethics Club. So the question that I have for the panel today is, I've been wondering why corruption has been given fancy names. For example, embezzlement, graft, when in fact it is thievery in industrial scale. So I wonder if there's any chance of us naming it thievery in the industrial scale and not giving it a fancy name. And my second question is, one of our vision as a club is Vision 2030, and we had that chance to present that at UNCAC event at UN on the 21st of June. And one of the vision is we want to see corruption declared crimes against humanity. Thank you.
Asante sana kwa hilo swali. Apologies to all of you. I'd like to also invite to the podium as a panel discusser, Dr. Kipngetich from the private sector. Karibu tafadhali. Apologies, nilikuwa nimesahau. Karibu. Asante sana. Makofi kwake as he comes to join us. Samahani sana. Question number 2, tafadhali. So that we answer those 2 and then move on to the other side. Tafadhali. Let's be mindful of time for those who are asking the questions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Teresia Karimi, a finalist at the University of Nairobi, pursuing Bachelor of Science in Geology. And my question is, as we commemorate the African Anti-Corruption Day, what are some of the successful stories that we can learn from and as well guide us in the future while upholding an inclusive space for the youths? Thank you.
I think we could start with those 2 panelists. Tafadhali. Yeah. Abraham Misoi, do you want to start us off? Asante.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nimrod. My name is Abraham Misoi from Transparency International, Programs Manager. I'm representing here the civil society institutions or organizations. Yeah, the first question, fancy names to corruption. And I want to start by asking a question. What is corruption? What is it? So we've tried to, and so many institutions and so many bodies have tried to define corruption. And to be sure, we don't have a name for corruption. The only name that we know, especially in our country, Kenya, is Uwizi. That is it, so that it gets to each and everyone. So what is it that you know about thievery, Uwizi? So when someone breaks into your house and steals your properties or your equipment or anything from your house, so that means that person has in a way incapacitated you in one way or the other. So it affects your daily routine, you are disturbed, you cannot do what is expected to be done because someone has taken something that is precious to you. So these fancy names, as we put it, it's just for the sake of it. But for us, we say corruption is using that entrusted power that you've been given by virtue of our legislations, the laws, the structures that we have in our country for your own personal gain. So meaning you're inhibiting or you're denying other people that gain that is supposed to go to them, especially the public. So giving fancy names to corruption for me is not the thing. The thing is, what is it that is making it us, going to deny us that which is meant for us as public people. So corruption, in a way, it's something that denies you what is meant for you. I'll give you an example. If the resources that is meant to purchase public or medicines or drugs in our public facilities, someone steals that resource that is meant for those drugs, what happens at the end of the day? You'll miss that drug in the facility. And at the end of the day, you'll not get to be serviced or you'll not get that drug. And what happens at the end of the day? You die because you're not going to get the drug to cure the disease you're suffering from. So that is in it. And the roads, the resource meant for our roads. So what happens to our roads? Dilapidated roads, roads that are impassable. At the end of the day, increase in road accidents, and perhaps you cannot get the produce that you're producing into your farm to the market. Then there's road. At the end of the day, you will not even get to do other things that is coming from that. So in other words, so what I'm trying to say in a nutshell, corruption with fancy names is not the thing. The thing is, how is it affecting our normal life? I want to jump the second question and run to the success stories. Our Constitution 2010 is major success when it comes to the fight against corruption. It has some articles, it has some chapters that are really very instrumental in the fight against corruption. That is a big success. Another legislations that we have in our country that have been passed by our legislators in the National Assembly and any other quarters that is supporting the fight against corruption and promote transparency, accountability, and integrity. But the main issue, enforcement of this. So that is now what is watering down that success that we are saying. Our Constitution is a success in the fight against corruption. What waters it down is the enforcement that is lacking.
Asante sana Bwana Misoi, makofi kwake. The second question, our dear sister, can I give it to you to answer? Thank you.
By second question, I presume it's the crime against humanity. Abdi, thank you for that question, and I think it's so amazing to know that Dedan Kimathi has an integrity and ethics club. Now, when you talk about, let us term this as crimes against humanity, the law doesn't work like that, unfortunately and fortunately. And I think the frameworks and mechanisms we have in place to persecute and prosecute people who have been caught with such crimes are enough. But now we have to ask ourselves why enforcement, as it has been said, is a challenge. And unfortunately, as a society, the non-state actors, we also play a role in this. And I'll give an example. I think 2 to 3 years ago, some people, very powerful people, were convicted by the judiciary that they were involved in, let me call it deep corruption. And one of the things we saw was their people from their ethnic groups going overboard, even boycotting and doing very malicious things, saying that huyu ni mtu wetu, and trying to defend them. So what the legal frameworks that we have in place at this time, can we first try to implement and enforce them? And I don't know if you know what crimes against humanity is. That will be very lethal, and I don't think we are ready for that even as a society. But my emphasis is that what we have in place right now is enough to help us eradicate this menace.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Dr. George Katete from the Department of Political Science and Public Administration here, University of Nairobi. I agree with the student from Dedan Kimathi observation. I think you're right, because many a times we have observed very keenly that corrupt activities are not given the right name, which is crime. And this simply has been as a result of this culture and the tendency to avoid, taking up some of the matters that touch on public finances and even assets. At those higher levels, we already have quite a lot in the media and the public domain. Of course, we will argue that Ethics and Corruption, Commission seeks to really use evidence in order to incriminate whatever scandals happen. But, gathering such evidence sometimes become tall order. And I think that is where, again, you find that we lose the war on corruption. So there'll be quite politicization, a lot of politicization of the matter outside there. And then you find this is going to defeat any gains that are being made. So that in my thinking is coming up with these names, such as nchi ya kitu kidogo, is just to downplay the bigger matter really that interferes or affects the life of our people and the future generation. I'll observe that, and of course, secondly, I know that quite a lot has been written. You've read quite a lot about corruption in the country, and also, we wish our Chief Justice for the best, because they mean well to this country. They are putting in place quite a number of approaches in order to support in the fight. But also, I know that you, as the future leaders, you too have got an interest to also help him in dealing with this vice. So this could be my observation for the first question. But yeah.
Asante sana, Dr. Katete. Can I invite two more questions? One in the private sector, the other on faith sector. Yes.
I'm here, Nimrod. To your
great.
right.
Go
Wonderful.
ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mushemi Murithi, and I'll shoot my question at my President Emeritus, Wakili Melvin. Thank you so much for representing us as young people. We feel included in this. Now, Kenya is known to be a very youthful nation, with those below the age of 35, such as a majority here, making up 75% of our population. What then is the contribution that we as the youth can make towards the fight against corruption and unethical conduct by public servants and anybody working somewhere? Thank you.
I'll ask Dr. Kimeti to take that question. And then second question, the lady in mustard. Thank you. Asante. Thank you. The one standing. Asante. Asante, just pass it on. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yvonne, commander from Mwangaza TV. And now my question is, most universities have been accused of sex and bribery in exchange to good grades, or rather lecturers or teaching staff holding on to students' marks in order to give in to their demand. So my question is, to what extent is this problem in our universities, and what are the universities doing about it? Thank you.
We, Yvonne, umeamua leo ndio ulize hiyo swali, eh? Okay, sasa ungesema nani ajibu basi? No, anyway, don't worry, Yvonne, we've got it taken care of. Let's go with Dr. Julius tafadhali.
Okay, thank you very much. It's good for me to be back home. I'm a member of staff on leave. Okay, so I think I'll pick up from where I left and then link the two. I think let's accept that corruption is theft. Let's just accept that that's the case. And how is theft defined in the Bible? It is one of the 10 commandments, isn't it? Thou shalt not steal. And when Moses was given those commandments, he was not told which one is higher than the other. He was just given a list of 10. And what are the others? The one that horrifies you most? Thou shalt not kill, isn't it? So in my view, it's the equivalent. Okay? So, thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not kill are equivalent, because they are among the 10. Now, if that is the case, how many of you profess to be religious? From recent studies, around 95% of Kenyans profess a certain religion, either Islam or Christianity, or I'm now in private sector. I used to be in the public sector. And in the private sector, I would like to refer to your website. In 2018, some of us took an initiative and say, what can we do on the supply side? And we formed the Blue Company Project. So go to bluecompanyproject.org. You will see some of the initiatives, and it's similar to the Global Compact, the one which was started by the late Kofi Annan when he was Secretary General. They are based in New York, but it's private sector being asked to do something on the supply side. Okay? And then KEPSA have some other initiatives. So, and then individual organizations within KEPSA, like KAM, also have other initiatives. So there are initiatives on the supply side, but we also need to sit with the demand side. We bring the two together. It is not so much about law enforcement. The laws are already there. It's about addressing the cultural question. And the cultural question addresses three things: the values of our society, the behaviors of our people, and the habits of our people. If we address those three things, the cultural side, then we enforce the law on the demand side, and then we address the supply side, because if we starve the demand side of the supply of bribes, the thing dies. And that is the kind of ring we must then address. Thank you.
Asante sana. Bishop Orari, please.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I think the question on giving corruption different names, if we can get an answer today, we can finish this meeting and go home happy people. Why I'm saying this is because we know what is right, and we know that corruption is evil, and it's eating into our society as a cancer. Now, for us in the religious sector, one of our thematic areas is that of spiritual formation. Now, spiritual formation is when you hear the gospel from the good books and you are discipled and you change from inside out, which means that when you receive that word that speaks against corruption, speaks against, like our sister spoke about degrees for sex, the same Ten Commandments says, thou shalt not commit adultery. And so I want to believe, because we are a religious society, we are not angry enough. We are supposed to go back and indeed introspect and ask ourselves as individuals, are you doing the right thing? Now, because we as religious leaders, one of our mandates is that of the moral mandate, that of preaching, teaching on ethics and morals. The word of God, when it's preached to us and we receive it, it informs and transforms. When you are transformed from within, when you start the journey of your walk towards freedom, because I want to believe those who are bound by that dragon of corruption, they need deliverance. And it is then our duty, we from the religious sector and our congregation, because we need to inform and persist, continue hitting until that dragon dies. Corruption is killing our nation. It starts by killing an individual, and we must call it the way it is. It's evil. And if we want to see this continent wake up and rise again, because I want to believe Africa is very resilient. We have been hit by many calamities, but by the grace of God, we have been on our feet. And we, the young people, who are 3/4 of this congregation today, we know young people believe in honesty. Young people want to see us walk our talk. And I want to believe it's doable. I don't want to leave this place feeling like it's a hopeless situation. It is possible. But then again, we must have that resolution, that determination, get out of this place and say, like indeed we have been told, we are crusaders who say no to corruption. And I want to believe that is where our healing will begin. God bless you.
Thank you. Makofi sana, sana, sana. Please bear with me and forgive me. I wish we could continue with the panel discussion, but those were wonderful questions, and I know you have several other questions. Can we keep them for later so that allow the panelists to go back to their sitting areas, and then we can proceed with the program? But I assure you, for the many questions that you have, I'll get to sneak them to them, and I'll get to answer them. Asante sana, Abraham Misoi, Dr. Julius Kipngetich, Bishop Dr. John Warari, President Melvin Thogo, and also Dr. Katete from the University of Nairobi. We're moving on with our program. We would like to hear from 3 different speakers, 2 being very important speeches, and 1 being the very keynote from our chief guest today. I'd like to invite my team to come and help me remove the chairs and the tables that are here so that we can proceed quite well. As we do that, for very 2 minutes, I'd like to invite NCPB. They have a theme song for today. This will be setting the stage for our speeches, the next part of the speeches. NCPB, I'm giving you 2 minutes, tafadhali, kwa sababu ya muda tuweze kusonga. Just give us an interlude and a theme song for today, being the day that we commemorate the African Anti-Corruption Day 2023, the 11th of July. Muko salama? Nasikia mko kimya sana. How are we doing? Si tuwapigie makofi NCPB wakija tafadhali, yeah? Asante sana, asante sana. Wanakaribia, halafu tutakuwa tunaendelea na program yetu. And to guide us through the next session of this program, I'll be inviting my co-moderator, Bwana Eric Ngubi from the EACC. He'll be taking us through this other program. But at the moment, let me invite NCPB Choir with their theme song for today. Asante na karibu.
Uadilifu kazini tunapowahudumia Wakenya, maadili mema tudumishe, taifa letu likanawiri, ufisadi tukaukomeshe, unadhuru uchumi wa nchi. Wana Kenya tumeamua, ufisadi kote tukomeshe, twawapa heko viongozi wetu, juhudi zenu tunajivunia, kwa mwamko mpya Kenya yetu, utenda kazi wenu tumeona. Wana Kenya ni jukumu kuzingatia maadili mema, nchi yetu fahari yetu tuitunze. Ufisadi adui wa maendeleo wa Kenya, nchi yetu fahari yetu tuitunze. Kupambana na ufisadi tuliunge mkono, nchi yetu fahari yetu tuitunze. Juhudi zetu bila Mungu ni bure, twaomba Mwenyezi ujasiri, hekima, vita hivi tutashinda. Tunawapa heko viongozi wetu, juhudi za kupambana na ufisadi, hongera tunawashangilia. Juhudi zenu tunajivunia, juhudi za kupambana na ufisadi, hongera tunawashangilia. Wafanyakazi tupambane na janga hili, juhudi za kupambana na ufisadi, hongera tunawashangilia. Utendakazi wenu tumeuona, juhudi za kupambana na ufisadi, hongera tunawashangilia. Uadilifu kote tudumishe, juhudi za kupambana na ufisadi, hongera tunawashangilia. Hakika ufisadi tutakushinda, uchumi unawiri, taifa linawiri, wa Kenya tupinge ufisadi, tutangulize Mungu katika mapambano. Ufisadi ni adui wa maendeleo, pamoja tukauangamize. Yote tutashinda, taifa linawiri, uzalendo tudumishe, tupende nchi yetu, tujenge taifa letu Kenya. EACC hoye, tumewashiza, wekezaji wote, wacheni kwetu, sote ni washindi, mikakati bora, taratibu zote, wekezaji wote, sasa hakuna matata, tunaishukuru serikali yote, kuhakikisha taifa likanawiri, EACC hoye, wafisadi wote, tumewashiza, wekezaji wote, wacheni kwetu, sote ni washindi, mikakati bora, taratibu zote, wekezaji wote, sasa hakuna matata, tunaishukuru serikali yote, kuhakikisha taifa likanawiri, EACC hoye, wafisadi wote, tumewashiza, wekezaji wote, wacheni kwetu, sote ni washindi, mikakati bora, taratibu zote, wekezaji wote, sasa hakuna matata, tunaishukuru serikali yote, kuhakikisha taifa likanawiri.
Another warm round of applause for NCPB Choir. Asante sana for the theme song. Shukrani, bila shaka tutawaita tena baadaye wa kipindi kuisha. Mabibi na mabwana, please settle down. We're moving on to the second part of our program. And to guide us through this is my colleague today, my co-moderator, Bwana Eric Ngubi, OGH, and also from the EACC. OGW, sorry. Karibu sana. Nimekupandisha daraja.
Thank you. Asante Bwana Nimrod Tabu kwa kutuongoza katika kipindi hicho. We are now moving to the second session, and that is the lecture itself, after we get brief remarks from the Commission. But that is not before I thank the Acting Vice Chancellor for acknowledging my work when you are reading your speech. Wakati ulisema Eric Ngumbi, nilishukuru. I did that work at the School of Law in Parklands years ago. Number two, we have people who are standing at the back. I can see a lot of seats that are empty. Please find a place where you can sit, because there's no reason why you should stand, yet we have seats in between. Get a place and make yourself comfortable. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have with us the Secretary and the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, that is Twalib Mbarak. Twalib Mbarak began his career at the Kenya Army, that is way back in 1984, where he served for 15 years in different ranks as a military official. Thereafter, Mr. Twalib Mbarak, having attained the rank of major, left military and joined the National Intelligence Service, where he served again and left in the year 2006 after performing various assignments, including being the head of intelligence analysis, also having served as an instructor at the National Intelligence Academy. He served in the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, that is the predecessor of EACC, then under our chief guest today. In 2010, he left and joined KenGen, where he again served as the official in charge of integrity and security management until he now came back to EACC as the Secretary and the Chief Executive Officer. CEO Twalib Mbarak is the Secretary of the Kenya Leadership and Integrity Forum, the National Coordinating Committee. He is also a member of the Executive Committee of the International Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities. I must mention also that while here, he is a former student, because I understand that both his bachelor and master's degrees were acquired from this university. Bwana CEO and former student of this university, please come and talk to us. Tulionyeshwa jinsi ya kufanya wakati mgeni anapanda pale.
Thank you very much, Eric. I think you have overpampered me. My former boss and the chief guest, Justice Aaron Ringera, I served under him for 4 years. The judge emeritus of the Court of Appeal, Professor Julius Ogengo, the Deputy Vice Chancellor. For the rest, I'll observe the previous protocols that were observed. I was told the terminology all protocol observed is a Kenyan, Nigerian, and South African terminology, which does not exist in any PR whatever. But I like it because it's a very good shortcut. I have a speech here, but I want to keep it off, and I know I'll get the support of over 70% of the Kenyans who are in this auditorium. They are under 35, and I know they are very impatient by character, very innovative, and they are very, very open without hiding, which is good. Somebody asked what is corruption. Another person talked about corruption having different terminology. Corruption has got different definition. I'm told corruption is responsibility minus accountability. When you're given responsibility and you are not accountable, the end result is corruption. How many of you agree with me? Second, there are two ways of addressing corruption. Looking at the symptoms and looking at the causes. Unfortunately, for those of us who are parents, many times when we are doing parenting and you get a kid who is a little bit rogue, you look at the stick and you cane the kid. You have not addressed the problem. You have addressed the symptom. It's like you have leakage in your house and you tell the house help, get a mopper, keep on mopping the water. It will keep on seeping to the floor. You have to address and check where that leakage is coming from. So it's very easy, and this is the question that we normally get many times. Nyinyi EACC mnafanya kazi gani? Mnalipwa na serikali na hamjamaliza corruption. It's like asking a policeman, how come that you have not managed to contain crime? There's a police force and there are thieves everywhere. Or it's like asking a doctor, why do we have hospitals and people are dying? They are very subjective and casual questions. Somebody asked about corruption being classified as a crime against humanity. It will not help. Another moderator talked about our constitution, and I take pride of that. Some foreigners, sometimes they ask us about corruption in this country, and they give us examples of other countries that they are doing very well in Africa. And I tell them with a lot of authority, those countries that are doing very well is temporary, because the war is spearheaded by an individual. In Kenya, one thing that we take pride of is that we have institutions. Most of you are very, very young. There was a time in this country, there was an office of the Auditor General State Corporation. When the other Auditor General gives his report, the Auditor General State Corporation gives his report. And he narrates how the looting was being done at that time. And the person adversely mentioned, he will openly say, atafanya nini, mwambie ende State House. That was then. At that time, you could not touch a minister on corruption or a PS. Today we arrest them, we charge them, we charge governors, and you will not hear a sitting president or the head of the opposition making noise. He fights for his own to get lawyers and pay for the legal fees. What am I driving at? I'm trying to tell you that as much as the fight against corruption, the clock is moving very slowly, but the good thing is it is not retrogressing. It is going in the right direction. So, how do we fight corruption? I'm supposed to give opening remarks, but I'm lecturing you now. And I take this pride because I used to be on the other side as a student 20 years ago. Now I have this privilege of being here looking at you. Of course, it was not as good as here. It was the 844 building, full of leakage those days. Can you imagine going into a classroom with an umbrella? That's what we found. And then I think the management of the University of Nairobi will give you credit. We are so impressed by what you are seeing here. This is very good and it's part of accountability. There's what you call a corruption triangle strategy of addressing corruption. There are three main pillars of fighting corruption. One, the public or the society. Two, the political culture or the politics. And then we have the structures of enforcement. What do we mean here? 70% of Kenyans are below 35 years. But if you believe that the right way is to vote a leader, when Kenya Power connect electricity, he chases them with a gun, then the problem is not that person, the problem is you. We are the ones who vote in some very funny characters. And then we make noise. You have the power of the vote. This is the third government since the enactment of the new constitution. I don't want to use the new. When you say the new, it means this was an old one. The current constitution. In the last two segments, we have governors who served 2 terms. And we were just doing a short analysis about those governors who made it for 2 terms. Something very interesting, most of those governors who served 2 terms have many issues with EACC. But if you look at how they came in, the society loved them because they were quasi-crooks. We loved them. We glorified them. We brought them to power. I was just whispering to my former boss, Justice Ringera, with all his CV, I told him, if you go to your hometown and vie to be an MCA, don't be shocked the person who will defeat you. So how do we fight corruption if the political culture is like that? Let's go to the public. The public makes a lot of noise about the police. And I have a very simple example that I experienced. I went to Qatar. In the course of being there, I found a young man speaking Kiswahili. I greeted him. Kijana unatoka wapi? Kanwa mimi kwetu ni Kisii, lakini niko hapa kama driver. I'm here like as a driver. We have South Africans here who don't understand Kiswahili. Let me speak in English. So he said, I'm from Kenya. I'm from Kisii. And I'm here as a driver. I've been working here for 6 years. What were you doing in Kenya before? I was a matatu driver, Kayole route. The youth, what are you expecting? What kind of driver is this? Anybody give me an answer, anyone? When he tells you, this man tells you, I will drop you in the middle of the road, mama teremka haraka sana, tunataka kurudi. Hatujapata watu, si ndio? Then I asked him a very interesting question. I asked him, you've been here for 6 years. Have you been caught with any traffic offense? What would be the answer? What was the reason? Huh? What was the reason? He told me in Kiswahili, dare you break a traffic offense here? These Arabs will just red stamp your passport and take you back to Kenya. What does it mean? The culture there and the enforcement. So, these Matatu drivers, you see them overlapping or whatever, they're not bad drivers. In fact, they're very competent because most of them work 18 hours instead of the standard, I think, 8 hours that is required by the government. So, it tells you, the public, if you are the person who believes you should overlap and when you are caught by the police, you give him 1,000 shilling, you are also partly contributing to that corruption. And I have heard here people quoting the Bible many times. I respect. Let me quote the Quran. God says he never changes people until they show desire to change. Prophet Muhammad said, when you see a wrong thing, there are 3 ways of approaching it. You stop it physically, or by your tongue, or by your heart. But when you stop it by your heart, you are weak in faith. Do we do that? We don't. How do you stop it? Vote for the right people. Respect the government of the day. Respect the laws. We have the best laws in this country. Unfortunately, we don't follow them. We have institutions. Our only thing we know is to accuse them of inefficiency. The judiciary is bad. EACC is not working. The police is not working. Strengthen these institutions, and everything will work. That's why you find in Europe, you hear the Dutch government has collapsed. They are forming a new government. It doesn't cause any problem because they have a powerful civil service that is totally functional, and when there's a political vacuum, the state operates very effectively. So let's look at some of these things in addressing the corruption. And I've always talked about corruption, that the worst thing about corruption is an invisible crime. You know, if you're a thief and you break into my house and steal the TV, I'll call the police and say, look, they have broken the grill, these are the footprints. Some thieves, they even eat, they go to the kitchen and eat first before they steal. So, ndio hao walikuja hapa wakafungua friji, walipata wine hapa wakakunywa nini. You mention everything, and the police, they record. But corruption, the grand corruption, is done in boardrooms. People are having coffee in big clubs, in lavish homes, and both of them, the giver and the receiver, deny being involved in that crime. It is the state to prove that corruption has taken place. So, with that short lecture, Professor, I'm one of your students. You can invite me for a day here. This is the same place, and I'll sit down there, and I'll give these young people the chance to ask me any question on corruption. Whether it is an abusive, provocative, I will come up here with my officers. Because I will need a whole day to explain the dynamics of corruption in Kenya. What you have seen is just an iceberg. How many of you watched Titanic? Siligonga pale juu tu, but the whole thing was, so corruption is like that. What you are seeing is just a tip. The whole thing is, it's too big. And blame game will not help. Don't blame our politicians. Our politicians are occupying seats legitimately. They were elected by people. It is you and me who elected them, so we respect them. You want to change? Wait for election, do a proper change of the government. The institutions, don't rebuke them. Tomorrow you'll be an employee of those institutions. You will understand the dynamics of lack of budget, lack of capacity, hostile environment. You will know why there are backlog in cases in court. You will know why EACC is getting overwhelmed. You will know why the prisons cannot manage the number of habusus. It keeps on rising. You will understand in depth. So with those remarks, the last thing that I leave is to the Vice Chancellor that through our people, we would like to have a forum here. And you can select the number of students because this place won't be enough. And we are willing to have an interaction and dialogue with the youth. because the future of this country belongs to the youth. Yeah? Unajua ukifika age ile sile, by the way, hii sile ya politician ati viongozi wa kesho. It's real. It's real because they say when you reach certain age, you become conservative. You don't want to make decision. You are playing safe. The young man ako na damu moto, kichwa inawaka na moto, ideas 1 million. So they come with ideas. Out of the 10 radical ideas, 6 are very good. How many of you have heard about the Wright brothers? The Wright brothers are the pioneer of aeroplane. When they started experimenting and taking kites on the hills, they were arraigned and taken to church to be exorcised from demons because they believed those guys were mad. Those 2 boys, the Wright brothers. There's something wrong with these people. They are trying to commit suicide. Then they said, no, we are working out on a system. We want to see if we can fly. And they were told, are you mad? How can you fly? It's only birds that fly. What is happening today? The world has changed. So before I welcome our Vice Chairperson, it would be very ungrateful for me not to acknowledge some of the key people that support us in the war against corruption. There's Madam Charity Kagwe. She really helped us. Today, this function is successful as a result of her support and contribution. We thank the University of Nairobi, first of all, by accepting to host us here. We have the nice choir that came and gave us some solace of our minds. You know, some of us as CEOs, by the time you leave your house, it's packed. The head is packed with challenges. So when we come to this kind of function and we listen to good music, we get soothed. I would like to congratulate the choir for singing the national anthem in Kiswahili. I have attended some functions and I find it very ridiculous that we end up singing our national anthem in English. It just affirms that we are culturally colonized. I am yet to see a Mzungu. His first name is Kamau, Juma, or his first name is Saidi, or Mwenda. Unfortunately, we accepted that our names are superior to us, and that is the way it is as a society. So the UNODC, the University of Nairobi, the organizers from EACC, and mainly you students who decided to attend this function. I thank you all, and may I take this opportunity to welcome our Vice Chairperson, Commissioner Dr. Monica Mwiru, so that he can put her welcoming remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO. Justice Ringera, Judge Emeritus of Court of Appeal, and our chief guest today, Professor Julius Ogeno, Deputy Vice Chancellor, representing the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nairobi. I'll follow my CEO and observe the protocols cited earlier. I have a speech, and I'll read it. But before I read it, I want to break some protocols. First of all, I want to say that I'm very proud to be back here. Students, I was a student at this university. I did a BCom, and also deep in my blood, I'm a lecturer, but not at this university. But currently, I'm serving Kenyans in this area of fighting corruption. When we were waiting for this event to start, a lady, and I'm looking at her, ask us, is it possible to have integrity in Kenya? And it took me back, because that is the narrative we have these days, that we cannot have an honest society. We cannot have integrity. But let me tell you, as the other speakers have said, it depends with us as individuals, what you choose. You can choose to follow the others, but you can also choose to do the right thing. And I told her that I really admire Wangari Maathai, the late, because she said that one time there was a forest in there was a fire in the forest, and the animals kept on asking, who will put off the fire? So they stood and watched. But a small hummingbird decided to do something. The bird with its small beak would pick a drop of water and go and drop it at the fire. So even you can do something. You can stand against this menace, because we know corruption is a cancer eating into our society. And many things have been said about the evils of corruption, but we can do something. And we will win this fight, and especially when we have the youth behind us. And I hope you are tweeting about it, that we can win this war. So kindly allow me to convey greetings from our EACC Chairperson, Bishop Dr. David Oginde, who is not with us today due to other engagement. He wished us a fruitful deliberation. Also, as we join the key stakeholders, I wish to recognize all the stakeholders, starting with our chief guest, Justice Aaron Rigera, and all invited guests and delegation from South Africa, and all others who have put their efforts to the success of this day and the continued support towards this fight. Your presence is a clear indication of the commitment in advancing the fight against corruption. As an academia, as I said before, in a special way, I wish to sincerely thank the University of Nairobi, led by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Kiama, for partnering with the Commission and agreeing to host the event. We are delighted that you could mobilize the staff and the students to join this conversation of promoting integrity in the society. Over the years, I have kept close ties with students as a lecturer. Therefore, as I said, I am delighted and I'm hopeful when I see the youth championing this cause. Actually, the National Census report indicates that 60% of our population is made up of youth, and it is estimated that 55% of the youths are in the learning institution. You can see you are an army. If you can be able to convince each and every person, just the youth, Kenya will be a Singapore. I hope all of you know about Singapore. Singapore, 50 years ago, was just like Kenya. And when their president, Lee Kuan Yew, took over, one of the ingredients was honesty. And today, that country is a developed country. I think it is considered as a developed country. And therefore, there is need for you young leaders to uphold integrity. And we know that the youth remain vulnerable and their character is largely influenced by the environment, but I encourage you to refuse to be influenced by negative forces. You should look at influencing others in a positive way. So I urge you, the youth, to embrace positive value system, because our moral fabric as a society is being eroded by greed, immorality, dishonesty, among others. So there's need to include the youth to entrench personal social accountability. To the youth, again, you must recognize that the value of your life, assess your background, avoid peer influence, and most importantly, that the future is bright for those who invest in it. So I'll just say those few words about the youth. And I urge you to continue this conversation. So at this moment, I want to take this opportunity to welcome our chief guest. But before that, give me only 2 minutes, because it will be unfair if I don't tell you about our chief guest. As I've talked about the youth, our chief guest is somebody you should look at him as a role model. So Justice retired Alon Riguera is the Judge Emeritus of both the Court of Appeal of Kenya and the East African Court of Justice, the Apparent Division. He graduated top of his class with a Bachelor's of Law degree in 1975. During that time, there were no Kenyans. So, so if he graduated top, it is through integrity. Subsequently, he obtained a Master's of Law degree from the University of Nairobi, Kenya. He's a holder of a diploma in Comparative and International Law of Human Rights from the Institute of Comparative and International Law of Human Rights, Strasbourg, France, and has a certificate of study from the Hague Academy of International Law. Between 1978 and 1994, he practiced law as an attorney and was a partner in the then leading law firms of Kamau Kuria, Kiraito and Rigera Advocates, and Oraro Recha Advocates. Concurrently with his partners, he lectured law at the University of Nairobi between 1978 and 1990 and attained the position and rank of a senior lecturer and head of Department of Law. Justice Rigera has been a judge of both High Court and the Court of Appeal of Kenya, the Solicitor General of Kenya, the Director and Chief Executive of both Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority, CASA, and the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, and a judge of the East African Court of Justice in prevention of corruption, law enforcement against corruption, including asset recovery and adjudication of corruption cases, good governance, and public sector management. He has been involved in many presidential and ministerial task forces and committees, and the most recent one of which was the Presidential Task Force and Steering Committee on Power Purchase Agreement, and chairman of FKF, Caretaker Commission. He is a recipient of several awards, Gadis Mark Medal for being the best final year student in the Faculty of Law, the Law Society of Kenya Award for Distinguished Service in Administration of Justice. 2007, he was decorated by the late President Kibaki with the Elder of the Order of the Burning Spear, EBS, for distinguished service in the administration of justice in various capacities. In 2012, he was an honoree of the East African Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities for exemplary and valuable service in the fight against corruption in the East African region. And in 2022, he got a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me, welcome our chief guest, retired Justice Aaron Rigera. Let us appreciate him as he walks to the podium.
University community, the Vice Chairman of the Ethics and Integrity Commission and all other commissioners present, the CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Mr. Twali Mubarak, the entire fraternity of EACC, Charity Kagwe of UNODC, and all the supporters of the fight against corruption, all stakeholders here, distinguished invited guests in various capacities, students of the University of Nairobi, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I've carried a small dissertation, so you'll excuse me if I take a little time. I'm not sure, Professor, it would pass because there are no footnotes. This absence of public accountability in the exercise of power created an environment in which corruption and impunity thrived. But truth be said, the impunity in public service was largely a reflection of the larger societal moral decadence in a country whose people stood for nothing. The general feeling was that there was no space for good persons of integrity, either at the workplace or in the social sphere. Values of honesty, fairness, equity, patriotism, and generally what may be described as national consciousness were lacking. Ours was what Mwalimu Nyerere used to call in the 70s, man-eat-man society. They had brought signs against Kenya, hivi ndivyo ilivyo, and we were branded man-eat-man society. It was a country of everyone for himself, God for us all. It largely remains that way. Yearning to bring confidence in the constitutional offices and in public service, the NAC administration enacted ethics fostering laws in the shape and form of the Public Officer Ethics Act of 2003, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003, and the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2005. That effort was crowned by the promulgation of the new Constitution of Kenya 2010 and the subsequent enactment of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2011 and the Leadership and Integrity Act of 2012. The new Constitution, which was people-driven and enacted by the people for themselves, spoke to their collective consciousness. It dedicated a whole chapter, chapter 6, to ensure an ethical leadership and administration. The chapter outlined the integrity standards required of persons holding or intending to hold public office in both elective and appointive positions. It was an embodiment of the aspirations of Kenyans to clean the country's politics and administration by injecting hygienic standards. Ladies and gentlemen, as we gather here today to evaluate Kenya's quest for an ethical society, we must first be clear on what are the essential building blocks for an ethical society. In my view, they include adherence and submission to the rule of law, a leadership of integrity and commitment to good governance, political will to combat corruption, independent and well-capacitated law enforcement agencies, civic responsibility, and proactive public participation in governance processes, merit-based appointments, cultural and attitudinal change, secure and credible whistleblowing systems, a vibrant civil society, limited discretion in the exercise of power, and responsibility and accountability for our actions and omissions. The quest for such an ethical status can be likened to a journey by train, which naturally raises the following issues. Is the train moving towards the desired destination in the first place? If so, is the movement at the desired speed? If no, why not? Are we all on board the train? Do we have all the expected passengers, including the citizen, the family, political leaders, public officials, the private sector, religious leaders, civil society, media, university students, academia, and professional associations? Is the locomotive engine working? What are our actions while on board the train? Could some passengers be in deep sleep when they are expected to be awake, monitoring the journey? Could some be beating the driver to reverse the train back to its original point, or otherwise frustrating the journey? What about some passengers forcing the doors open to jump out of the moving train? What could be obstacles in the journey towards an ethical Kenyan society? And what are we doing about them? If you don't fancy the illustration of a train journey, you may consider that of conveyance by pipeline. The destination of an ethical society is reachable by a veritable pipeline. The pipeline has several pumping stations. The family, the school infrastructure, the job market, the faith sector, civil society, the media, the political leadership, and the citizen. The critical question is this: what is each of those pumping stations in the pipeline doing in their space to nurture and sustain values that are essential to an ethical Kenyan society? In my view, the need for stakeholders to evaluate the progress made, challenges encountered, and the reforms required in the pursuit of an ethical society is more urgent now than ever before. This is necessary in order to secure our motherland from moral collapse exhibited by wanton corruption and unethical practices, plundering of public resources, and limited role models to be emulated in the society. An objective evaluation of Kenya's ethical space impels me to the following 7 broad observations and questions. Number 1, there is general consensus that Kenya's value system is shattered, as evidenced by the behavior of its men and women, such as corruption, which is now institutionalized and internalized as a way of life. What are the underlying factors for this state of the Kenyan society? And what is the viability of redemption? Number 2, in enacting Chapter 6 of the Constitution, Kenyans hoped to clean up their politics and see to it that only men and women who met the integrity threshold occupied public office. In particular, the objective of Chapter 6 was to insulate public trust from abuse by ensuring that persons appointed or elected to state and public offices met the prescribed meter. Kenyans are yet to realize the benefits of the ideals and values embedded in Chapter 6. Indeed, the chapter has been more honored in the breach than in the observance. The integrity suitability requirement for public office have not been effectively enforced. What is the ideal way forward for Chapter 6 in the country's supreme law? Question number 3. Kenya is currently witnessing rampant cases of forgery of academic certificates. This is one of the leading unethical practices reported from higher running institutions. In some cases, there are universities involved in selling academic transcripts and certificates to individuals who never set foot in any classroom. What a shame. What a shame in the universities. What does this portend for our country's reputation and future? How can we overcome this menace? Number 4, citizens of Kenya have over the years demonstrated a tendency of not caring much about the integrity of persons entrusted with the public office. Indeed, the CEO whispered to me that if I stood in Meru, I could be defeated by a Manamba. Although citizens may largely hate corruption and its consequences, they are guilty of embracing, defending, and standing in solidarity with those accused of embezzling their resources. Citizens have been seen following leaders accused of corruption to EACC offices and even the courts of law, where they sing and dance as the leader is processed. I've never forgotten a case in 2000 when I was head of the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority, and we prosecuted the first cabinet minister ever to be prosecuted in Kenya's history. He left court, went to Uhuru Park, and a huge rally there with hundreds of supporters, and declared himself white as snow. Kenyans hold maandamano against law enforcement processes, including impeachment. You've seen it. Although they hold the sovereign power, Kenyan citizens have done little towards operationalizing and safeguarding that power for their benefit. They say, we hold the sovereign power. What have you done with that sovereign power when you erect crooks to superintend over national affairs? Of what use is that sovereignty? What explains this paradox? And how can the concept of civic responsibility be infused in the Kenyan society? Are Kenyan citizens co-authors of the misfortune that befall them? This is an easy question I can answer, yes. Every people deserve the government they get. They have no business complaining after the outcomes. The civil society and the faith sector played a pivotal role in Kenya's quest for constitutional reforms. They were at the center stage of the birth of the Kenya Constitution 2010. However, these crucial sectors have not exhibited similar vigor and commitment towards implementation of the same constitution, a product of decades of pain and suffering. What could be done to rekindle their flame? Number 6, without a doubt, the Kenyan judiciary has the potential and ability to catalyze or deliver the social engineering that Kenya desires, including bringing to an end the culture of corruption and impunity through progressive jurisprudence. Is the judiciary playing its expected role? And last but not least, the law has established professional bodies to regulate the different categories of professionals in the country to ensure compliance with established ethical standards. However, many professional bodies have done little to improve the ethical standing of their members. In my experience as Chief Executive of Anti-Corruption, I never came across any case of mega corruption which didn't involve professionals. My own profession, lawyers, architects, accountants, bankers, quantity surveyors, engineers, name them. All have fallen short, I want to say, of the glory of God and of their professional standards. What is the missing link, and how can this be put right? Is a question out to you. Ladies and gentlemen, the above prognosis leads to the inescapable truth that a successful pursuit of an ethical society calls for concerted efforts by all stakeholders to walk the talk and not talk about the walk. Somebody said we are talking about the walk. Yes, we are. It's part of it, but let us walk more. The ideal state of ethical commitment is manifested by a state of blamelessness and uprightness in an individual person. Julius Getich told you that. I repeat it to you. In our walk towards an ethical society, it is important to remember the saying, listen to this, that monkey see, monkey do. Monkey see, monkey do. A child learns from its parents. A congregation from the priests and imams. Workers at every level, from their bosses and the seniors. And the wananchi from their leaders. Example always speaks louder than prescription. If the president is corrupt, the ministers will be corrupt, the PSs will be corrupt, the directors will be corrupt. If CEO of EACC is corrupt, all his directors will be corrupt. They will be preaching to us here, but they will be doing what the boss does. So let's not cheat ourselves. Prescription is not the most important thing. Example is the most important thing. People follow leadership. Where stands Kenya today in the scales of ethics? The Kenyan society is lagging behind on matters of societal integrity. This is manifested in many ways. For instance, most Kenyans want to take shortcuts to achieve success in any endeavor, ranging from use of fake academic certificates to seek employment, theft of public resources, and disregard of the rule of law. Sadly, we have also heard of cases of children killing parents so as to accelerate succession in their favor, among other social ills. It's not uncommon nowadays to hear young people asking others, wewe hujabarikiwa? Meaning, haven't you been blessed? If your father has not died or mother, you have not been blessed. Hujabarikiwa. because they are waiting to inherit. So that is some of the things you see around. The cancer of dishonesty on the part of ordinary workers, management, and leadership, the professionals, the political class, and yes, oh yes, the spiritual leadership in the various faiths is regularly reported in the press, the social media, and interpersonal conversations. Who doesn't know of the rampages of Kenyan and Nigerian apostles and prophets? Or the imams of Pakistan? We are not being mindful of one another. We are not faithful stewards of the resources and responsibilities entrusted to us. And patriotism is a value only sung on national occasions. Then we wait for another national occasion to sing it. Ladies and gentlemen, what are the challenges and opportunities in the quest for an ethical Kenyan society? Despite the existing policy, legal, and institutional frameworks for promotion of ethical values, Kenya's moral fabric remains shattered, with the family no longer playing its crucial role in shaping values. The television, social media, the internet, etc., are the new parents of our children. And they are parents without accountability or responsibility. They are the proverbial harlot. They have power, but no responsibility. Our education infrastructure, too, has failed to deliver. Education is key in equipping society not only with knowledge and skills, but also with the right attitudes and values to make them patriotic and responsible citizens. In my view, Kenya's education system has focused too much on developing the intellectual capacity of young people and given little emphasis to inculcating the right values to augment the values learned at the family and community levels. This has led to an unhealthy competition among learners and schools, culminating in cheating in exams, forgery of certificates, issuance of unmerited academic grades, here they are called sexually transmitted degrees, among other unethical issues affecting our institutions of learning today. We didn't have such degrees in my time, I can assure you. And those students whom I taught, including Charity, will tell you we were outstanding people of integrity. We knew they were students. They were not our wives. Taking an helicopter view of the scene, we see several challenges, including greed and glorification of corruptly acquired wealth, exposure of children to drugs, pornography, and unregulated social media, diminishing apprenticeship role of parents and the other members of society, few role models, disregard for the rule of law, and inadequate sanctions for the offenders, diminishing leadership accountability in the various spheres of life, politicization and ethnicization of anti-corruption initiatives, and admit that corruption remains a major challenge in all spheres of Kenya's governance and continues to cause grave harm to citizens. This state of affairs behooves us, as a nation, to inquire into the question of where the problem lies and take urgent and decisive remedial measures. From my experience in the fight against corruption and subsequent reflection after exiting the stage, I would recommend the following measures. 1, infusion of compulsory ethical training in Kenya's education system. I am informed that in the quest to inculcate values among young people, EACC has, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, infused integrity content in the basic education curriculum. This is a good move. Remarkably, the competency-based curriculum is value-based and expected to promote values such as integrity, patriotism, respect, and responsibility among the learners. Consequently, higher learning institutions, including universities, Mr. Vice Chancellor, should follow suit and incorporate a common course unit focusing on ethics and national values, and be happy to come and teach it pro bono. Number 2, wealth declaration by all public officials. In keeping with the national values of integrity and transparency enshrined in Article 10 of the Constitution, the law relating to wealth declarations should be reviewed to make it more effective to achieve its intended objectives. Those who wish to serve in government must know that once you become a public officer, you cease being your private self and become public property. The secrecy of wealth declarations should, in the interest of transparency, be discarded to allow public scrutiny. There's absolutely no point of declaring things that are put in huge envelopes and put in custody and subsequently, perhaps, the National Archives. In the same breath, I note that the Conflict of Interest Bill 2023, which embodies very progressive anti-corruption measures, is at an advanced stage of enactment in the National Assembly. Enactment and effective enforcement of a strong law on conflict of interest, such as the one before Parliament currently, will go a long way to tame graft in the country. Number 3, strengthen enforcement of Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity. Ethical standards should be applied from the top levels of leadership to the bottom. Persons entrusted with leadership responsibilities should lead by example and shape the ethical tone for their subordinates. When I was director of CAS, no minister in the government of Kenya dared call me on any issue. They would call my officers, the assistant directors, and they had instructions that if any minister called, they report to me. And they knew nothing would be done. So it's very, very important to set the right tone in the discharge of your mandate. Leaders teach by example. No amount of pontification will change behavior if the example of leadership speaks a different language. And when leaders do the right thing, their subordinates and ordinary citizens will fall in line and march in step. That is the surest path to an ethical society. Our Constitution has rightly been termed as progressive and transformative charter that, if effectively implemented, could significantly address most national challenges. Its enactment signified a major break from the past. The Constitution embodies far-reaching reforms aimed at creating a more democratic and accountable state. We borrowed most of it from South Africa. I say you also have a good constitution. One of the most glittering jewels in the crown that is the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is its Chapter 6. Its primary objective was to lay a solid foundation for an accountable, trustworthy, and ethical leadership in recognition of the fact that leadership is everything. The chapter sought to address public accountability and governance deficits manifested over the preceding years. Kenyans are here to realize the full benefits of the ideals and values embedded in Chapter 6 of the Constitution. In my view, in order to insulate public trust from abuse by leaders, all public officials should be subjected to periodic integrity vetting to determine their suitability to continue serving. A non-government official, regardless of their rank, should directly or indirectly do business with the government. That is key. That is key. What has ruined this country is government officials, government leaders doing business with government. One must choose to either remain in government or quit public service in favor of the honey of business. Number 4, address gaps in anti-corruption legal frameworks. Noting that gaps in our existing anti-corruption laws have been a major challenge in the fight, there is need to fix this challenge to ensure that the corrupt are effectively held to account. In this context, I am saddened to note that there are currently 2 bills proposed in the National Assembly which will, if enacted into law, weaken an already fragile legal framework. The 2 bills seek to repeal critical provisions of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act 2003. The first bill, which is sponsored by the Honorable Member from Mbeere North, seeks to substitute criminal prosecution for corruption offenses arising from procurement flaws with administrative sanctions. While the second bill, sponsored by the Honorable Member for Homa Bay, seeks to repeal the legal provisions that prohibit corruption convicts from appointment to public office. Both bills are, in my opinion, inimical to the public interest. With regard to the first bill, I can state with authority that it took many hours of deliberations in the years 1999 and 2000 between the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority, which I had the honor to head, and representatives of the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee and the Public Investment Committee to come up with those provisions now sought to be repealed. It's not as if Parliament was not involved in having debate on those provisions. Those provisions were inspired by our objective reality. I well remember the eloquent and persuasive arguments by Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, Kiraito Murungi, and Muskari Kombo that informed those provisions, namely that 80% of Kenya's corruption was procurement-related, and the experience on both the parliamentary committees and the Controller and Auditor General demanded the enactment of that law. Nothing has since changed to warrant removal of those provisions. If anything, the situation has become more dire as we read from the Kenyan press every day. Entrepreneurship has replaced manufacturing, farming, and professionalism in the country. It would be a tragic monumental step backwards to enact the amendments proposed by the member for Mbere. I would plead with him to withdraw them. If he does not, they should be resisted on all fronts. With regard to the amendment by the member for Homa Bay seeking to remove the impediment of our corruption conviction on appointment to public office, I can only say that the proposal runs afoul of the letter and spirit of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. The member is a lawyer, whom I taught, and he was a brilliant lawyer. If he read Chapter 6, if he reminded himself of those provisions, he would know the amendment actually runs afoul of the letter and spirit of the Constitution. Corruption must be made and remain painful to the offender. The more painful, the better. If the amendment seeks rehabilitation of the offender, rehabilitation of corruption offenders should not be by way of appointment to public office. Never. The present deterrent of such disqualification should remain in full force and effect for the sake of Mother Kenya. I would in this case also plead with the honorable member for Homa Bay to withdraw his bill. If he doesn't, again it should be resisted with verve and vigor in every forum. And if passed by Parliament, the President should return back to sender with a rejection. It stands to reason that in a country committed to get rid of the scourge of corruption, amendment to existing laws should always be aimed at strengthening them, never weakening them. Number 5, build the capacity of critical institutions in the fight against corruption. To enhance efficiency in the fight against corruption, there is need to strengthen the capacity of key agencies such as EACC, the Judiciary, Auditor General, and ODPP by enhancing their budgetary allocation. It is also imperative that corruption cases be heard and determined expeditiously. In this regard, legal provision should be made to prescribe the timelines for the hearing and determination of those cases in the same manner as we have for election offenses. They must be heard and determined in 6 months. Why is it impossible to do the same for corruption? How come cases take 20 years? Let me give you a good example. The year was 1994. I was a judge in the High Court. A former colleague of mine at the University Law Faculty, Feroz Mnoroji, came to my chambers. Been initiated. He asked me, Judge, How long do you think this case will last? I told him, fellows, 6 years. He asked me why. I said, 2 years in the magistrate's court, there will be an appeal. 2 years in the High Court, appeal. And 2 years in the Court of Appeal. Those days there was no Supreme Court. I tell you, the case didn't last 6 years. It went on for over 20 years, with the result that the judge who terminated it was sacked for want of integrity. Some of these things take. Number 6, recovery of assets stolen from the public. Gentlemen, ladies, corruption is not a crime of passion. Apana. It is a premeditated crime, usually for material benefit. The strongest deterrent to the crime is not a long prison sentence, but the deprivation of the gain obtained. In this regard, I commend EACC for intensifying its asset recovery crusade. In the same breath, I commend the Kenyan judiciary for developing a friendly asset recovery jurisprudence. I commend you, Mubarak, and your team. I commend the judiciary. You are all doing a very good job in asset recovery. The combined efforts of the EACC and the judiciary have given hope to Kenyans that the fight against corruption is not mere rhetoric. In social gatherings, people talk about what has been recovered, from who, and they talk about it with pride. The efforts have struck terror in the hearts of the corrupt, that their material gains are only a corner away from being recaptured. This strategy should be revamped and strengthened so as to be more effective in dislodging the benefits that accrue from corruption. Revamping of asset recovery should include enactment of enabling legal provisions for EACC to retain a percentage of what it recovers, so that there is no time the Commission is without resources to undertake its asset recovery mandate. Such a provision would be very good for the fight against corruption. And for more public impact, such registration should provide that the recovered assets be redirected to visible public benefit projects in key sectors such as health, education, shelter, and infrastructure. Number 7. My students are now sleeping, but I'm about to end. Corruption is now entrenched in our society. It is an evil we cannot afford to live with anymore. A strong message must therefore be sent to all and sundry that corruption is a disease that should be stigmatized and its perpetrators shamed and shunned. In this regard, appropriate mechanisms should be pursued within the law for periodic publication of a list of shame of all persons who have been found guilty of stealing from the public. We should even put them on the roadside, not just in newspapers. Ukomero, Kisii, Nairobi, everywhere. Ringera hapa, Mubaraki pale, Susan pale, tuwajue ni wakina nani. Such publication will effectively stigmatize corruption and contribute to the much needed cultural re-engineering. Number 8, reward for anti-corruption champions. In addition to creating a very hostile environment for the corrupt, there is need to take measures to reward those who have gone out of their way to fight corruption. This entails taking measures to proactively identify, recognize, and reward individuals who have blown the whistle on corruption, either in the making or given information on corruption that has occurred. Such an initiative would encourage a culture of integrity and patriotism, which are critical values in the fight against corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, allow me to say the following. Despite the drawbacks experienced in the fight against corruption in Kenya over the years, significant effort has been made and notable progress realized. Kenya has the potential to successfully tame corruption. Indeed, the country has fought and largely won other wars before. We defeated the colonialists and achieved our independence in 1963. We ended one-party dictatorship in 1992. And we abolished a suffocating constitutional superstructure and gave ourselves a new dispensation in 2010. Those achievements show that when a country comes together, no challenge is too big to handle. Realization of an ethical Kenyan society is a mission that is possible. Let us embrace the spirit of partnership between the public sector, the private sector, civil society, the media, the trade unions, the professional associations, and the faith sector in creating an ethical society that is the antidote to corruption in all its forms. Partnerships are formed for profit. The profit of those partnerships I'm commending we form shall be the welfare and the good governance of the people of Kenya. I rest my case. A luta continua.
Thank you. Let us appreciate Justice Ngara more. He deserves another clap. Asante. Thank you, the Honorable Justice Aaron Ringera, for that powerful lecture. Karibu pande, Justice Ringera. Asante sana. Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree that the lecture by Justice Ringera has addressed a wide range of issues. We can be seated. He has addressed a wide range of issues, all codified under the theme of the journey towards an ethical Kenyan society. He has created a picture of that destination called ethical society, where we want to go. He has given us the building blocks, what it will take for Kenya to achieve the status of ethical society. He has also highlighted the roles and the responsibilities of different actors and what each of us must do so that Kenya can achieve or attain that status of a society that is ethical. So we do appreciate that. And I believe that every actor, every partner in the fight against corruption has taken note of that which they have to do. Listening to the speech by Justice Ringera, it comes out clearly that the war against corruption cannot be the responsibility of EACC alone. EACC is one among very many actors who must do different things so that we achieve that kind of society we are pursuing, and that is the ethical Kenya. That means that Parliament has to do its bit by enacting strong laws. That means that the civil society must do its part by holding the government to account. That means that the faith sector must also do their bit as the custodians of our morality and ensure that we are reminded that corruption is one of the forms of evil that will deny us the opportunity to see the kingdom of God. So everyone, including professionals, he has reminded us that professionals are expected to use their knowledge and expertise to advance public good, but not to facilitate or assist the merchants of corruption to execute corruption schemes. He has also addressed the constituency called the public and reminded citizens that it is not enough to say that we are sovereign. It is not enough to say that we are the orders of sovereign power if we are not able to operationalize that sovereign power by demanding accountability from the people we have entrusted with the management of our duties, of our affairs. So if each of those sectors and each of those groups could do their bit, then we will realize that status of an ethical society. Justice Ringera has also talked about the role of universities in this process. This is where professionals are incubated. If we don't have integrity there, that means that at the end of the day, we are going to have people who are intelligent with the competencies, but they do not have the integrity that they require in order to make decisions that advance public good. So for those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, I request that we give a final clap to Justice Ringera, and then we bring that session to an end. Chief guest, there is a kind request from members of the press that after this, you spare 3 or 4 minutes to just tell the country 1 or 2 things that could complement what you have given us in your speech, together with the CEO and other dignitaries. And that brings to an end my tenure. Alafu sasa
naomba your element of surprise.
Okay. Shared vision. It is your role in combating or in corruption prevention that will continue to determine how fast corruption will be minimized in the Republic of Kenya. To our esteemed sponsors, that is EACC, University of Nairobi, UNODC, the Office of the Attorney General, KRA, National Cereals and Produce Board, African Union and European Union, I say thank you for your generous contributions and unwavering support in various played an important role in the commemoration of this day. Your financial, technical, facilities, and participation has gone a long way in supporting the various activities that we have witnessed this day. To the University of Nairobi, our acting professor, Julius Agengo, and your team, I wish to thank you deeply for opening your doors for this stakeholder engagement event. Asante sana. We promise to come back again and again. Please keep your doors open because we have identified opportunities to partner with you. We would love to be here once more, isn't it? Okay, to our distinguished guest speakers and experts, we thank you for your profound knowledge, expertise, and inspiring commitment you have imparted in us today. These insightful discussions have enriched our understanding and empowered us with practical tools and strategies towards this noble cause of fighting corruption. We thank you for raising our awareness, educating and inspiring us. We feel richer than we were when we came into this room this morning. To our distinguished guests and participants, all of us, I wish to thank you for you are the cornerstone of this event. Your presence and active engagement have provided immense value to the event. The lessons, the shared insights, and the active participation in the discussions have fostered an environment of collaboration or collaborative learning. Your enthusiasm, I remember our student from Dedan Kimathi and the others. Your enthusiasm and patience is a demonstration that you are committed to the cause of eradicating corruption and promoting ethical practices in Kenya. For the organizing committees, that is the University of Nairobi, CLIF, and EACC, I wish to sincerely thank you for your dedication, your time, commitment, and planning, and the execution of this successful commemoration. We thank you. Cannot forget the media, Nimrod and company, for the publicity and the awareness that you have created to the public on this important day of African Anti-Corruption Day. We truly appreciate you. Last but not least, I urge all of us to continue to work together in our pursuit for a value-driven society where integrity, transparency, and accountability guide our actions. How I pray that we all uphold the national values as enshrined in our Constitution. Thank you all. May God bless you.
Madam Sophie Habuga, thank you so much from the KRA. Asanteni sana. We're coming to the close of this wonderful commemoration today, but I'll request the guests who are here to be upstanding, and then the guys doing photography should be behind me by now, sindio? Mkimbie tu wapigie makofi muje mpige picha tafadhali. For the chief guest, the CEO, together with Professor Ogengo, Madam Vice Chair, representatives from the Auditor General's Office, UNODC, the commissioners, Reverend Father Mutie, Professor Firoz, upstanding because I wanted to get a picture with the rest of the auditorium, and then we'll do a brief one in front here. Yeah. All right. So as we do that, I'd like to thank the delegation that has come all the way from South Africa, led by Professor Firoz Kalkalia. Thank you so much. Once again, if you could wave and please give them a round of applause. The wonderful delegation from South Africa. Karibuni tena, tunasema kwa Kiswahili, welcome back again and again and again. And thank you for the wonderful work and all the success. The guys at the back, you can also stand. We want to see if we can get a few of you to be part of, this was the idea by the organizers, that they get part of the audience as well, together with our guests who are here today. Asanteni sana. If that is done, one more minute, 2 seconds. Asante sana. Let me now call the chief guest, the Honorable Justice Aaron Rungera, CEO Twalib Mbarak, Professor Ogengo, Madam Vice Chair, Madam Charity also to come to the podium, Reverend Father Joseph Mutie, Professor Firoz as well, if you could join us. The head of SIU, which is the South Africa organization and delegation that is here. One representative, the board of the University of Nairobi as well, to come to the podium because we're going to have a photo session. Commissioners, EACC, Commissioners EACC also to come forward. And the CEO, CASNEB. I know there's a representative from the National Series on Produce Board as well. RBA as well. Let's all come here together and commemorate together. Asante. Chief guest, Bwana CEO, pia karibu. Haya, tuendelee na picha. Wale wako na simu za mkono pia mpige. Hii picha nataka kuiona kwenye mtandao pia tafadhali. Isiwe tu kwenye ofisi ya EACC na kwenye ofisi ya University of Nairobi. Sawa sawa. Happy smiles, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for a wonderful commemoration, the 11th of July 2023, the African Anti-Corruption Day. From here, our VIP guests will proceed to the left of the hall, and then the rest of us, tutatoka upande nje. Remember there are exhibitions that are there, and then lunch will be served as soon as you go outside. Okay. Yes, sir. All right, the whole delegation from South Africa, I understand, want to come to a front. And then please pardon me, the University of Nairobi Choir, while you're sitting there, tafadhali mtatufungia kwa wimbo wa taifa, upesi upesi, sio? Nimekumbushwa. The South African delegation, please. We're happy to host you, we're happy to have you here. May you have this photography session as a reminder of today's event. Karibuni sana. Nam. Okay, smiles, ladies and gentlemen, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Asante. For those who are here, please be upstanding the national anthem quickly, and then we break. Thank you so much. The University of Nairobi, if you could help us, please. From where you are. From where you are. Let's go. Thank you, and God bless you. Have a lovely afternoon. So for the rest of us who'd like to go and view the exhibition sites or the tents, they're outside on the 6th floor. And then we can all congregate on the 5th floor towards the balcony area. We have lunch served there. Karibuni sana mabibi na mabwana, and thank you so much for making time to be with us here today. God bless you.